It is now 6:03 and we are out of closed executive session. We will reconvene the regular meeting of the Board of Education with the pledge to the American flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bucher.
Here.
Mr. Herrera.
Here.
Mrs. Haut.
Here.
Mrs. Mayville.
Here.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Here.
Mr. Zickert.
Mr. Zickert.
All right. Are there any items on the agenda that any members of the board would like to amend or move?
Yes, if we could pull out the personnel report for consent.
All righty. Anything else? All right. Hearing no other items, do I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda of the regular meeting of the Board of Education on September 16th, 2024, with the exception of the personnel report on the consent agenda being pulled out for separate consideration?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Bucher and Mr. Herrera? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bucher.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Haut.
Aye.
Mrs. Mayville.
Aye. All right, next up, we have a public hearing on District 100's final 2024-2025 budget. Before I turn it over to Mrs. Armstrong, I just want to thank her for all the time and work that she's put into this. It is a huge, 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 huge project. I know she's spent lots of early mornings and late hours here in this building working on it, and we really appreciate her time and effort. So with that, do you have any thoughts?
I
Dr.
do.
Shaw?
I would like to also commend Mrs. Armstrong and her team on putting together this budget. I have been very impressed by Mrs. Armstrong's work throughout the course of this year to really keep the broader vision of the district in mind at a time that it's been really challenging. Mrs. Armstrong was challenged by coming into what we were anticipating to be a deficit budget at $1.5 million of ESSER funding that we decided to assume into the regular budget. We also wanted to additionally spend in O&M and put funds there, as well as in technology. We also have had significant increases in our utility costs. Nonetheless, with her knowledge of the budget, her planning, and her thoughtful approach to it, she does not present a deficit budget this evening. She is presenting a balanced budget, and that is no small task. So thank you, Mrs. Armstrong.
Well, I think you did my highlights very well for me, so thank you. One of the key components that made this year a little tricky is, as we've talked about, the corporate personal property replacement tax, CPPRT. We hear a lot about that coming on, and we had seen significant increases in CPPRT money coming into the district starting with FY22, where we saw a $4.2 million increase, followed by another year of increase of another $1 million. Last year, we saw about a $3 million fall off of that CPPRT as things started to regulate again. FY25 estimates came out, bringing us down yet another $1.9 million. So going from 2 years ago at $8.9 million coming into the district of CPPRT money, we're now back to our FY21 range of about $3.9 million coming in there. With that, bulk of that has been allocated in the FY25 budget for O&M, which is our operation and maintenance fund, which will allow us to do some of those projects. But as a precautionary, as Dr. Shug mentioned, we did see 183% increase in our electricity charges over the last fiscal year. A lot of that is tied to delivery costs of what we are using and how we get our electricity. We are actually using less energy, but it is costing us more to get it here. And that is a lot attributed to the infrastructure increases that are happening across our area. So as they want to build out our electrical grid and be able to handle those. The result is in our own home utility costs going up. It is that infrastructure, the delivery cost that's spiked us about $1 million increase in that line item in our budget. We're also looking at our CPI for next year's tax levy, which will be capped at 3.4%. As a reminder, we are capped at 5% maximum if CPI is over that. That's either you are capped at CPI or 5%. So you can never go over that 5%. So we will be capped at that 3.4% for next year. As we did, Dr. Shug indicated, we did put some spending in for our technology, which will include replacing all of our staff laptops, also increasing our phone capacity with a phone system upgrade, and a smart board replacement at all secondary levels. Very excited that we were able to put those into this budget. And we do that with the help of the E-rate funding that has offset some of our other costs. So there's a nice balance in there. We are still expecting the finalization of the ESSER work on the HVAC and air quality within our buildings. So we will see those increased costs and things coming in this first quarter of 2025 as that ESSER funding expires at the end of September. We have until January to liquidate those funds, but all of the funds must be committed by the end of the month. And we are on target with that. One of the highlights we did have, I talked very briefly at our last special meeting on the debt service fund, is that we have an excess in there about $2 million, which was our sales tax revenue coming in higher than what we projected in our abatements. So that money is sitting in our Fund 30 fund balance, and the expectation is that we'll be bringing forward a defeasance for the board to consider, and that will allow us to prepay any outstanding debt, making sure that we're using those funds from that sales tax for what we had indicated we would be, which is abating those taxes and allowing that to reduce the tax burden on the interest payments by our taxpayers. So that will be coming during the FY25 year. We did see slight increases in the IMRF fund. That we are having our percentage of increase, the employer share is going from 7.6% to 8.31%, and we did have a 7% increase in our health insurance premiums. That went into effect with our new plan year on 9/1, and that 7% is absorbed through the district contribution and the employee contribution. I do preface that those insurance rates did come through, and it did not impact any employee more than $20. So although 7% sounds a little high, it did have an impact on our staff. We have not increased those rates in over 8 years, so it was the first increase we have had, and the insurance committee reviewed those as well. Capital projects, as the mayor came and presented the check for the impact fees. That fund, those funds are put into the capital projects fund, which that coupled with the $1.5 million we were able to put in the O&M fund. Out of district resources this year, we have about $2.1 million that can be used for projects within the district, which of course those projects will come before the board to be approved in our capital plan. And we are looking at still having the approval. We're finishing up some access control security in our buildings for the access control modules and door locks, and that is all being processed hopefully through our Health Life Safety Fund, which is Fund 90. I know that's a really lot to absorb, but that's the quick summary of the budget. Any questions?
I think there's some, I think you did a great job with the budget, so I'm not saying anything bad about that by any stretch. But I'm looking at the financial future. I think the only good and bad things are, the good thing is, when we were capped at 5%, it was nice to get the 5%, but inflation was higher than 5%. So we were losing ground in theory. Fortunately, our collective bargaining agreements didn't exceed that 5%. I don't think any of them did, that I can remember at least. Coming forward with a 3.4, we're gonna be at the rate of inflation, which is good. We're not necessarily losing ground with that in theory, but a lot of the agreements we have, which make up by far the bulk of the budget, are higher than 3.4% as we move forward. So I think there's some good and bad news in there, not with the budget, but I mean,
Yep.
in projected spending as we move forward.
And actually, that increase was about 6%, so we were a little higher than what we were getting in the CPI side. And as the contracts come up for negotiations, and that was conversations that we've already started to have, is that those, that period of the last collective bargaining agreements were made when there were definitely some influxes to cash within the district, but it was also a time of right-sizing our staff and our salary compensation plans for all of our groups, that bringing them up to the $15, getting that started with those earmarks. I think those were important hurdles, but yes, we are going to have some challenges in the future.
And I think the good and the bad part of it is, I mean, the property tax is our biggest revenue source, but it's only part of it. So that's capped at 3.4%. If the state decides they want to give us in evidence-based funding more then that's not a terrible thing
Yeah.
either.
Thank you, Joanne. We really do rely on you a lot for this, and we appreciate all the work you put into it. If anyone in the audience would like to address the board on the topic of our 2024-2025 budget, you can, Janine will wheel the podium out if you want to step forward. All right, hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. And we will move on to our next item. Yeah. Okay, district celebrations. Item number 1, professional administrative certification of excellence. This is a pretty cool accomplishment on behalf of Pam Ashens. She successfully completed the course of study to achieve the certification of Professional Administrative Certificate of Excellence. In order to do that, she had to show a high level of expertise and knowledge in the administrative profession. And she was recognized by the Institute for Credentialing Excellence. This is the American Society of Administrative Professionals Certification Program. The program's taught through an intensive e-learning platform with 1 year to complete the courses and take the exam with 3 attempts to pass. It's comprised of 4 learning modules consisting of interpersonal communication, the task and project management, computer and internet technologies, and management. This certification was developed to recognize, validate, and certify the knowledge and skills of today's administrative professionals whose expertise and contributions in the workplace often go unrecognized and unrewarded. It requires recertification every 2 years, completing a total of 24 hours of education or training equaling 2.4 CEUs, and a recertification fee of $75. And I think if you ask any of the people sitting around this table up here, we did not need the, who is it, American Society of Administrative Professionals to tell us that Pam is amazing at her job and keeps this building running, keeps us board members informed, and make sure we know where we're going and what we're doing and that we're fed. And she's fantastic. So, and this, again, is just an example of her going above and beyond. And I can't say enough good words. I've been on the board almost 12 years, and Pam is just, she's wonderful. She's on her 3rd superintendent now. Oftentimes, superintendents like to hire their own person for this position because this is, the superintendent works very, very closely with their executive assistant, and it has taken about 5 seconds for our superintendents to get in here and realize that they wouldn't be able to go out and find anyone better than Pam. So thank you for everything you do, and congratulations. We're really proud of you.
Congrats.
Alrighty, district, let's see, we have some other celebrations here. I'll turn it over to Dr. Shug to highlight.
All right, and I do want to take a minute to recognize Jason Constable and the BHS Drumline, who welcomed you all this evening. We are returning to having our students here to be recognized and to kick off our board meeting. So we are very glad that they were able to do that for you this evening, and hopefully you enjoyed that when you entered. I wanted to read sort of a special celebration to you this evening. This school year, we had one of our staff members at Lincoln Elementary who had an unexpected serious allergic reaction at school. Thanks to the quick actions of some of our staff, her life was saved. We are so grateful to have such an extraordinary team whose quick response and thinking made a true difference. We would like to recognize Kim Yaki, Elias nurse, Jana Tumanaro, Elias social worker, Val Mutton, Elias instructional coach, Lily Jarka, Elias para, and Judith Becerra, Elias second grade teacher, and our Elias administrative team for their quick thinking and response in this situation. In the morning, both Jana and Judith saw our teacher in the hallway, saw she was not doing well. They got her to the nurse's office where Kim assessed her and determined she needed to administer an undesignated EpiPen. Kim called 911, who then transported our teacher to the ER, where the doctor shared that because of the quick actions of the team at Lincoln, her life was saved. We're just so grateful that we had that team in place and wanted to recognize them this evening and say we are very happy with that outcome as well. Then we have a number of shout outs this evening. I see some of you in the audience, and I know it's a busy time of year always, but I'm going to go ahead and read through the shout outs for us, and our board president will be greeting you and handing you recognition for your efforts in being recognized by your colleagues. And so I'm going to read through all of them. If you're here, come on up, and then we will take a picture, which everyone loves, at the end. So Megan Frick at Lincoln Elementary School. Megan goes above and beyond for her students and is committed to finding them effective and useful methods of communication. She creates engaging lessons with a range of hands-on games to keep their attention and help them learn. She sustains a friendly, welcoming, and loving environment, collaborates amazingly with coworkers, and consistently sees the positive in everything. Any child would be so lucky to have her as their SLP. And Megan Franklin from Washington. Megan has been my go-to daily resource for all things kindergarten during my long-term sub-assignment. She provides weekly lesson plans, troubleshoots tech issues, offers support, and processes daily classroom events. She has been an invaluable support throughout my time at Washington, and I am so grateful for her support, encouragement, and friendship. Lacey Salaberg, also from Washington. Lacey has been a huge support as an instructional coach. She helps with assessments, Mastery Connect, grades, report cards, and even helped create sub-plans when I was out sick. Lacey always has an upbeat and cheerful attitude and offers concrete interventions and supports, or just offers a supportive listening ear. The staff at Washington Academy are so lucky to have her. Jen Hunter at CMS. I want to shout out Mrs. Hunter, and this one's especially special because it comes from a student. This is one of Mrs. Hunter's students. She takes the time to get to know her students, and she makes learning easier by helping kids until they get to understand something. I look forward to attending her class every day. Mrs. Hunter seems happy to be at work and seems to truly understand middle schoolers. The best part about being in class with Mrs. Hunter is listening to her read us a story. Christy Morgan from North High School. Christy has served as the coordinator for instructional coaches for technology since the inception of the one-on-one program in the Belvedere School District nearly a decade ago. While there have been several staff who have transitioned through this role, the team has remained cohesive and adaptive thanks to the consistent leadership Christy provides. Christy creates a team environment in which each member is able to contribute using their strengths and interests while maintaining a shared focus on the evolving needs of our staff, students, families, and community. In addition to her work with the district-level ICT team, Christy is a vital team member at Belvedere North High School, where she collaborates with her administrative and coaching team to support school growth, provides training for staff, engages in problem solving on any issue that comes to her attention, identifies and improves processes, and makes time to teach a class each year to stay connected to the day-to-day experience of our teachers. Our school district is truly fortunate to have Christy Morgan as a part of our team. Brune Young at North High School. Brune Young has made a positive impact on the culture and climate at North in his very first year as an administrator. As dean, his primary role was to respond to student discipline needs, and he embraced that opportunity to get to know students and help them learn through their mistakes. Brune is a constant and positive presence in the hallways, making it a priority to be visible and accessible for both staff and students. As a result of Brune's efforts in concert with the administrative team, security monitors, support staff, and faculty, Belvedere North High School last school year saw a 50% decrease in major incidents. Brune has been a welcome addition to the team due to his efforts to develop and improve processes, his resilience, his willingness to learn, and his passion for the school community at North and in District 100. And just as a note, this was last year. This year he is going to serve as our athletic director at North, and we are very excited for that as well. Carla Kirchmer at Central Office. Despite being here for such a short time, Carla has a wealth of knowledge. She is always helpful, always pleasant. She responds to questions quickly and kindly. If she does not know the answer immediately, she will give you a timeline and meet that goal every time. Carla has made my job easier by helping with time clock questions posed to me from coworkers. She's awesome at her job, and I truly appreciate everything she does. Franklin, Teddy, Anderson, and our building and grounds team. These amazing people have been working in the rain to install the new playground equipment at Washington. The students are going to be thrilled to have the new equipment, and we all appreciate your hard work. We would also like to add District 100's facility department and our groundsman, Teddy, our main person, who takes care of Washington Academy and Central Office, who helped with the cleanup after the project was completed. And last but not least is Jen Jackie from the Belvedere Park District. Jen Jackie is a valuable, extremely active member of the Belvedere community, from being the executive director of the Belvedere Park District to serving on a number of community organizations that provide support and endless opportunities to the students of District 100. Jen's impact on our children is beyond words. Everest High School staff would like to thank Jen for not only providing job opportunities to our and all high school students, but also for taking time out of her busy day to personally work with Everest students. Her advice and mentorship have helped them become more competitive in the job market and become valued, productive members of the Belvedere community. Thank you, Jen, for all you do, and thank you to all of those individuals who are doing work that is above and beyond. Come on, you gotta come up.
Come on, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Christine. Oh, sorry. She's going everything.
Not so fast.
Thank you. And next up, we're going to hear from our student council representatives. Come on up. First up, we have Belvedere High School. Are you here, Belvedere High School? Oh. Okay, well, next up, we have Belvedere North High School. Come on up and introduce yourself. I know this is your first time with us, yes?
Yes.
All right, tell us who you are and go ahead and start your report for us.
All right, so just to introduce myself, my name's Ailani Mora. I am a sophomore this year. I did do student council last year, but since, Raya took over this, so since she graduated, I took on the honors. So first off, we have Lincoln Elementary School. They had a fantastic back-to-school night. They complete the back-to-school night with a balloon arch, a photo station, and they were sponsored by PVO. The school year has been off to a great year. Set Withman, they kicked off the year with the back-to-school night on 8/20. They had a Disney theme. They also got welcomed by their wolf mascot and Mickey Mouse. They had a dine and donut night at the Sips and Sprinkles to celebrate their first day of school. PTO supported a family and fun run, a donut dash on 8/24. They had 96 participants. And then at Belvedere North, we had a great school year so far. We have a new thing called Link Crew this year. They helped faculty and freshmen transition to high school. They also had a great start off. Assembly. Also, we recognize National Suicide Prevention Week with numerous activities. throughout the week, including presentation from Kevin Polke and a nice note day. Finally, our fall sports are off to a strong start. Central Middle School, before school, they started on, several staff members helped our sixth graders transition to school. It was called Jump Start Program. They kicked off the year with a dance and open gym for all the grade levels. They raised $2,500 for PBIS. Our teachers also have been enjoying some local food trucks, which that is very fun. And then also the CMS girls cross country team is currently ranked 12 in state. And then in Caledonia, they started off really good and they welcomed 2 new classroom teachers and 3 support staff this year. They also include math testing last week and they are busy with playwork stuff this year. And PTO is gearing up for some major fun run of the year, which will also take place on Friday, September 27th.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have our BHS representative here this evening?
Sure, you can.
All right.
Mr. Herrera would like to do a quick board shout out.
Yes.
absolutely.
So I wanted to thank the teachers and the students and the bands, the high school bands that came out this weekend for the LULAC Belvedere Hispanic Heritage Day Parade that took place on Saturday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there. I was down visiting my daughter at University of Iowa, but it turned out to be a great event. Saw some pictures. I was glad to see the participation by District 100 representing at the Belvedere Hispanic Heritage Day Parade. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks for bringing that to our attention,
Yeah,
Mr. Herrera.
absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, committee reports. First up, Business Services Committee meeting, September 3rd. Anything Mr. Herrera or Mr. Booker would like to highlight or share?
I think Joanne covered it.
Yeah.
All righty. Any questions for our Business Services Committee members? All right, Ed Services on September 4th. Mrs. Hauk, anything to add to the minutes?
I just want to say Dr. Bauman did a great job giving us an early childhood education update. I know that was one of the things the board said they really wanted, so she did a great job. It was really interesting to hear everything she had to say.
All right, any questions for Ms. Hauk? Okay, Policy and Personnel, September 12th. Mr. Zucker, do you have anything to highlight or share?
Just one really quick thing. One of the policies that we're going to be up for first reading is the conditional probation holding expulsion and abeyance in abeyance policy. There are a couple options in there, so when you look at the first reading, look at them and decide if you would like none, one, both. You know, there's 2 options: option 1, option 2, or neither. Okay, so I just wanted to call that to your attention.
Any questions for Mr. Zucker about that? All righty. We also have first reading of the policy Mr. Zucker mentioned, and then policy 2260, Uniform Grievance Procedure, 2265, Title IX Grievance Procedure, policy 5100, Staff Development Program, policy 720, Harassment of Students Prohibited, policy 7185, Teen Dating Violence Prohibited. Any questions on those? Were those all pretty much press changes, Mr.
Yeah,
Zucker?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Nothing? Alrighty. Next up, hearing, yes?
We do have that policy 7215 that Mr. Zickert was alluding to
Oh,
in those.
excuse me, I should have interrupted. That's my fault.
It's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Shug. I think what Dr. Shug is looking for is, it's on first reading now, but it'll be second reading next month. So the committee decided to leave the options in there and let the board decide what they wanted to do instead of making a recommendation. There was some feeling for both. So I guess it's, the one, well, you can read them. I don't need to read them to you. That's presumptuous on my part. But I think that I think that the administration is looking for direction on how the policy ought to come forward for the second reading next month. Am I correct in that, Dr. Shuck?
That is correct, and if you
Okay.
open up that policy, you see there's option 1 and option 2. The first option, the recommendation is that when any time we are bringing forward a conditional probationary agreement, the superintendent would provide a brief written summary of the rationale for that, which seemed to be something that the board was looking for and part of the conversation that we had. The second option would be that if the conditional probation is to be recommended, it shall be reviewed and conditionally approved in advance by the superintendent. And then to become effective, however, the conditional probation must be offered by the administration, accepted via written agreement by and between the parent and guardians, and the student and school board. Notably, the school board may reject the administration's recommendation and proceed to expulsion. So the issue was, should conditional probationary agreements come through the board or just be shared with the board, or the rationale shared with the board? This provides the board with both, with either one of those options, but they are different. We can't have both. So the existing policy doesn't provide for either of those things. This policy would provide for the superintendent providing a summary, option A, option 2, that we would be able to do the conditional probationary agreement, and then the school board would have the opportunity to approve or reject that, and then we would move forward to expulsion with the families.
And this is the policy that we had our attorney come speak to us about.
Correct, yes.
And it's my understanding he thought there were some issues with that second option, if I understood him correctly, that would not be what he would recommend.
I would say that that is accurate. He had some, he shared, I think, with the committee, some potential concerns with option 2.
I think the first option would give us I think it would correct some of, not correct, it would be helpful in some of the things that we've had questions about before.
Any other thoughts on this?
I went to the committee meeting, I'm the board member who asked that it come forward. I said at the committee meeting that I have a stronger preference for language 2, and I can absolutely vote for option 1 if that's the direction that the board feels is the best. I think it's absolutely a step in the right direction, and would be fine too.
So the summary by the superintendent, would this be a rationale for recommending the CPA as opposed to expulsion, or what would be expected to be in that summary rationale?
I would anticipate just providing some background as to why the administration is recommending the conditional probation agreement and what some of those circumstances were.
Yeah, I think for me personally, but I didn't mean to interrupt, I
You're fine.
apologize. Is that one of the questions everybody's always had, not everybody, a few people have had, is some of the rationale for it. And we always get, well, you don't know the whole story, or you don't know this and know that. This may be some bridge toward some of that, maybe not all of it, but at least some of it. And I thought that may be helpful. In my opinion, that may be helpful.
And I think it's a helpful activity regardless to have us put into words what the rationale is for the recommendation. So I would be very comfortable with option 1 for sure.
And the committee was as well.
I think the committee
Yeah.
was comfortable with option 1
I mean,
as
there
well,
were some that
yes.
liked option 2 better, but I think they're fine with option 1 too.
Yeah, I can get comfortable with option 1.
Do you have what you need?
I am hearing option 1, and that's what we'll bring forward for a second read. I'm good with that.
Alrighty, public comments. Next up, members of the public and employees of District 100 may make public comments. At this time, we have one person signed up, Misty Coriel.
Okay, two things. So my first one is a question for the board. I think we're going to be discussing the long-range or facilities planning tonight. Okay, so I watched the last meeting. First thing, I just want to say, Joanne, you have done an amazing job. I heard all about the budget that was put into, I don't want to call it a surplus, but that's what I'm going to use because I don't know all the right words, but allowing that if the state of Illinois wasn't going to fund us, we could still operate as a district for a while. So that's pretty amazing. And then I heard about how Mr. White has been challenged with facilities being in a state of disrepair and different things needing to be done, and the budget and where that's going to come from. So it sounds like he has inherited quite the basket of issues. And I think he's done a stellar job so far of trying to navigate that with the limitations that we have. So my next thing is what I paid attention to the meeting and I kind of looked at the reports and I was listening to the layout of the plan for the funding and how we would fund it with all these different resources and ways and means. What I didn't hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the life cycle planning, right? So if we're gonna bring something into, say, years 1 through 5, and it's a major repair and it's a major overhaul, well, what happens in years 15 to 20 when it's starting to approach end of life and it needs to be replaced then? And we're still in the process of our funding plan and bringing money in to finish this massive overhaul of our facilities. That's just one example, right? Like, what are we doing to make sure that Mr. White or whoever, is here after him has that bucket of money to fix the HVAC or replace it if needed, or the roofs or what have you, right? Where is the life cycle planning for the replacement, not just the maintenance of it, but when the replacement time comes, where's that in the plan? I might have overlooked it or missed it, but I would love to be directed to it. And then my other point is, I watched the meeting last week, or maybe it was late last week, I don't know, with regard to voting in the new member, to replace Ms. Brenner. And it became apparent to me, as somebody who was watching, that it was most important to not vote somebody in as it was to vote the most qualified and best person in for the role, right? And so I think where I walked away from that most disheartened were the parting comments at the end of the video, which by the way is still out, that it was indicated that it was a colossal waste of time. And I take issue with that. And the reason I take issue with that is because there are members on this board, every one of you was voted.
Thank you, Ms. Corey, all your time is
Every one of
expired.
you was voted in by the community. And everybody's opinion matters, just not because they don't agree with you. It doesn't mean that it's a waste of time.
Thank you for your thoughts tonight. Thank you. All right, next up, consent action items. I know Member Herrera has requested to have item number 3 removed for separate consideration. Any other requests? All right. Do I have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 2 and 4 through 12 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? At this time, I would like to acknowledge the following donations. 100 pair of headphones from First United Methodist Church for Lincoln Elementary School and Washington Academy. School supplies and a monetary donation for supplies from VFW Post 1461 for Washington Academy. Conga drums from Christopher Vittore for Belvedere North High School Band. 2 $75 Walmart gift cards from Belvedere Walmart for Belvedere North High School Music Department. And $200 from Augie Christopher for Lincoln Elementary School. Thanks to all of those organizations and people for their donations to our schools. All right, roll call please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Bucher.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Next up, do I have a motion to approve item number 3, personnel report on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Herrera and Mr. Bucher, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera,
Abstain?
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Ms. Maybell.
Aye. All right, moving on. Roll call action items. First item, District 100's final annual 2024-25 budget. Do I have a motion to approve our budget?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Herrera and Mr. Zickert. Once again, I'd like to thank Mrs. Armstrong for her hard work on this. A lot of times the phrase most important thing we do as a school board gets thrown around. I don't really like to look at the decisions we make in a hierarchy, but this certainly has to be right up there when it comes to the decisions that we make. So none of us, with the possible exception of Mr. Herrera, are finance experts up here. And so speaking for myself, I really do rely on our CFO to help guide us through this process, to help the board make informed decisions about how we spend our money, and to help us assure that we are spending that money in the best ways to assure our kids get a really great education. So thanks to Mrs. Armstrong, and any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk,
Aye.
Mr. Booker,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Ms. Maybell.
Aye. Next up, 2024-25 School District Scorecard. Do I have a motion and a second to approve our 24-25 School District Scorecard as presented?
So moved.
That would be Mr. Herrera and Mr. Booker, I think.
Yep.
Any discussion or comment from staff?
I'd just like to share that each year we put together a scorecard for our school board to approve. This year, which is a little different, is we started the scorecard last year with our first year of implementation of our new strategic plan, and it's generally a lot of the data carries over. Our goals are being maintained in terms of our trajectory that we've set for ourselves. We did add some goals to the overall scorecard. One is around our benchmark school districts, so we're looking at how we're tracking compared to our benchmark school districts in some of our academic areas. And we add a framework that we use for CASEL, which is around social emotional learning. And then the slide presentation that's attached gives you an overview of the, we call them milestones, the key tasks and steps that we're going to take over the course of this coming school year to work towards those goals for your review as well.
Any questions for Dr. Carson? All right. Thank you, Dr. Carson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mr. Booker,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Ms. Maybell.
Aye. Next item, do I have a motion and a second to approve the District 100 Substitute Handbook as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Herrera and Mr. Zickert. Discussion.
Yeah, I was at the policy committee meeting where this was presented, and I'm not on the committee, but I had input as to whether or not it could certainly have been on consent. But I really felt like it deserved its own moment. I think that it is, I don't think, it is the representation of a number of people taking very serious the idea that we want to honor the contributions that substitutes make here in creating a handbook. That was not without a great deal of work by Dr. Adie and the team, and I said that at the committee meeting, but there's a lot of time, energy, and effort that's gone into it, and there was some feedback at the committee meeting that I attended just as an individual, that it's already been very positively received by people who are utilizing it and who have seen it or who have engaged with it and see that it's, it makes a very positive statement about the fact that they're not just seat fillers, but they're in fact part of our school community at large. And I applaud the effort that was made to put all that together.
Thank you. I just want to recognize Olivia Ivan, too, our sub-coordinator, for the hard work that she put into it. She really put a lot of hard work into it. This is not the last sub-handbook. We plan on bringing this on an annual basis. We plan on reaching out to our subs through POSIP and asking them, what else would you like to see in here to make sure that that it's their handbook and we have in there what they are looking for in there. So.
I mean, for me, who was overjoyed when we got rid of Kelly and came back to here, last year there was some difficulties in the transition of the two, and we made it through that, and I think this is an excellent step forward that we're doing this, and very positive for the district and the subs. I thought that was a very well done document. Deserves the accolades it's going to get or has got.
Yeah, I think it's great too. I've worked with a sub in my classroom the last 6 days, and I think this would be wonderful for all of them to have in the district I work in as well. So great job. And my daughter is a substitute teacher, and this would make her feel way more comfortable in any school or classroom she went to. So good job.
Yeah, I really appreciate this too. My dad's a substitute in District 100. I think he substituted like 140 days last year or something absurd like that. And this is great. I think it's easy to underestimate how intimidating it is for a new sub to come in to a building, and this really gives our subs a good place to start with their questions, and I'm sure makes them feel more comfortable, especially when they're new to subbing in our district. I also think going forward, maybe like a building addendum, maybe our principals could work on, because there are different sort of procedures at the different schools, you know, the copy machines here at the school, or, you know, I know the high schools, the two high schools have different arrival times for subs. BHS wants the subs there at one time and North wants the subs there at a different time, which is fine. But like that might be a project for the coming school year. But I think this is awesome, and I'm super glad we're able to give this to our subs, because I think you know, my dad has talked about how important it is to make our subs feel comfortable and welcomed, and how, you know, he gets a great feeling walking into our buildings, and our front office staffs are just great at greeting and making sure the subs know where they're going and what they should be doing, and I think this is just another piece that will really help with that. So awesome job. All right, roll call please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Bucher.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. All right, next up, superintendent goals. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the superintendent's goals as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Herrera, Mr. Zickert. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Bucher.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Motion pass. Item 5 under roll call action items. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the BASS MOA for late hire / salary increases as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the BASS MOA for late hire salary increases.
Second.
Mr. Zickert and Mr. Herrera. Have a discussion on this? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye.
Sorry about that. Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Bucher.
Aye.
All right, motion passed. Next up, do I have a motion and a second to approve the 24-25 administrative contract for 10-month administrator, elementary assistant principal as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Herrera and Mr. Booker seconded the motion to approve the 24-25 administrative contract for 10-month administrator Laura Schultz, assistant principal at Meehan Elementary School, starting base salary $80,500. Any discussion?
I would just say we are very, very excited to have Laura with us. She was not able to be with us here this evening, but I know that she's had the opportunity to meet our Meehan staff and be integrated with our principal there. We were looking at making a late hire. We lost a fantastic assistant principal to our neighboring district, and Tasha Reyes, and Laura has had big shoes to fill, and we're really excited that we think she's going to be able to do that. So
And
we're
Bo was
excited
very
to welcome
excited
her.
as well.
Yes, yes, Mr. Smith also very excited.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Item 7 under roll call items. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the contract extension for employee 091624-A?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Herrera and Mr. Zickert. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk.
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Moving on, board discussion, facilities master plan update.
All right, we have with us here this evening Allison Mestel, in addition to Mr. Nelson, who we see most months with us. And tonight, really what we are going to do is walk through this PowerPoint. And in this PowerPoint, you are going to see highlighted, again, the initial scope that the board has prioritized in regards to this project. Ms. Mestel is going to walk through all of the different options for Perry and answer any questions about what those different pieces look like. And following that, we have laid out a potential timeline aligning with the STIFO funding mechanism that we discussed at our special board meeting and what that might look like. Again, there's a lot of interchangeable parts there, so we're really looking for the board feedback. And then we were asked to provide an administrative recommendation, which we did as well. So excited to have, I think, some good information to share with you this evening, and I'm hoping we're going to get one step closer to understanding the board's direction for a master facilities plan. So we're excited. So, Ms. Mestel.
All right. I just asked for short slides as we go.
Sure.
So if we go to the first slide, it should be something that you're familiar with seeing, basically breaking out the needs assessment into things that have been tackled, things that are prioritized first, or as next steps, and then kind of everything that's left. So this should be pretty familiar, but just using it as a basis to continue the conversation today. Going to the next slide. So this initial scope, you'll see those next step items over to the left side in the white boxes that identifies.
Allison, would you like a podium?
I declined it earlier, but I can take it now.
You just look like you might be more comfortable.
You're totally fine.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the white boxes on the left are those next step items, part of the initial scope, and again, the goal of that is to make sure that the buildings are functioning well, they're warm, safe, dry, continue hosting teachers and students. On the right side in the colored boxes, those are some of the priorities that we've heard about, taking things a little bit further than just those critical needs. So in the purple we have Perry School, which we've heard a lot about. The yellow represents possible options for early childhood. In the blue, we've heard Everest, we want to expand within the Everest facility, and then the pink is the clinic. So if we're expanding Everest, the clinic moves out. Really, again, the one that we have the most options for and the one that we're trying to select a direction on is Perry School. So as we move into the next slide, we'll talk about what those options are. And you've seen this flow chart before. We've already made one key decision to keep Perry open, so that red side is just not valid anymore. So now we need to look at all these different options, whether it remains in place, whether it moves to a new site, and what those could look like. And this flow chart breaks out, what that means for the students and staff based on each option. I know you've seen this before, so I won't go through in too much detail right now. Moving to the next slide. So now we get to the tiers of options for Perry. Tier 1, again, is those facilities assessment needs. You know, at a minimum, what do we need to do to make sure this is a good functional building for you? And so we've broken out, there's that 10-year cost, which is the 4.4 million, but the initial priority scope is 2 million. So that's the next steps, and it includes things like safety and the secure vestibule at the main entrance, making sure we have ADA compliant accessibility with some elevators, replacing those aging mechanical systems, and the roof as well. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is when we start to take a little bit more of a look inside the building, make sure that it functions well for teaching and learning. So we call tier 2 enhanced status quo. Trying to have a light touch, but still doing some interior renovations to make sure that the classrooms are appropriately sized for the number of people in them, that the office is ideally located for that safe and secure entry, and just, again, try not to do too much, but enough to make that difference for teaching and learning. And the price that you see here, it's important to note that this is just the cost of that additional renovation. So we still have costs for facilities assessment for maintaining the building, but the 3.1 to 3.9 estimate, that's this next step of work. To the next slide, tier 3. This represents fully renovating Perry. You know, we've heard a lot of goals about, you know, making Perry the best that it can be, and so we're trying to step down that path. We're keeping the exterior walls and envelope of the building intact, but really doing a much more significant renovation to the interior. Again, there's going to be some facility assessment needed as part of this. You know, any building is going to have some facilities work required. But we have a cost estimate of 5.5 to 6.7 for a full interior renovation of Perry. So this is working on those adjacencies, making sure that the classroom layouts make sense, they're the right size, and it's serving you well for how you want to teach now and into the future. Tier 4A, this is sort of a reimagining of Perry on an existing site. The goal here is to bring it up to a full 2-track school. So it's increasing the number of students that could be here. We've heard of that as a goal just for staff to collaborate and making some space there. And what this consists of is basically removing the 2 newer additions on the east and west side of the school and replacing them. So that way we can have a full classroom addition, an office adjacency that works well for us, and expand some things that are maybe a little bit undersized, like the cafeteria and the gym space. Something to note here is because this is such a significant renovation, some of those facilities improvements are just going to get wrapped into the work. So there's a little bit of overlap here. When we get into design, that's going to be defined a lot better if we get into design on this option. But we start to see a lot more overlap there. And the next slide just shows kind of a really high-level concept of what that might feel like. So the orange roof represents that initial oldest part of Perry that will remain intact. And then we'll have some larger additions on either side. So not any taller than the building is now, the 3 stories, but definitely making space for the 2-track school there. All right, so tier 4B. Similar goals, trying to make sure that we have a Perry neighborhood school that has space for a full 2-track, or you know, two classrooms per grade school, but it could be on a new site. I know that there's been some work done to identify where those sites could be, and so we have kind of a rough cost for site acquisition if this is the process that we want to follow. And then building costs again, so that total project rough order magnitude cost encompasses what the building and the site could be. And that's something I know here is because it's a home rule building, the facilities assessment costs aren't super relevant, so that's to be considered separately. And then tier 5, this is combining that early childhood need, which we've heard about, a desire to have a centralized early childhood facility, and combining it with Perry. So, you know, if you want to build new, it's one site, might need to be a little bit larger site, but have a little bit of efficiencies there and some shared spaces. So again, it's a full 2-section elementary school plus the early childhood center. And I'll give it to Dr. Shrug to talk about this part.
Okay, so if we were to proceed down this path, again, looking at that initial scope, one of the things that we will need from the board is a decision on Perry. And here you see how that falls out in that timeline. So there's 3 Perry options here across that timeline, and I'm going to talk about what that means and what that looks like. And there's also two options here in terms of early childhood. You just saw that there's more than 3 options for Perry. There's also more than 2 options for early childhood. But for the purposes of understanding how we might fund these different projects, we've laid them out in a potential way. Again, the board could move these pieces around as they see fit. So if you recall in the Stiefel presentation from last week, 2 weeks ago, they talked to us about the fact that we have our DSUB and our life safety bonds that will become available as of 2025. So you can imagine that year one here is 2025. At that point, we would have 29 million that would become available. In our projections here, we would anticipate using a combination of both of those types of bonds to do a different, to do a variety of work there. Here we have laid out that this would be a total of $32 million to do the projects below. That would be Perry coming up to tier 2, adding the clinic, and then also doing the Everest expansion. And then down at the bottom, you see the 23 million, which is the most critical facility needs projects that we have. And those include the really critical pieces we've discussed, for example, at our meeting 2 weeks ago, like the HVAC at Washington, as well as at South Elementary. But those aren't the only projects accomplished in that 23 million. So we feel like that, of all the things on here, is mission critical, as well as making that decision on Perry. We would free that 29 million, and as you see again, we're at 32 million here. This means that the district would also be committing $3 million from a combination of fund balance and our O&M funding. So we would also be making that commitment moving forward. That would bring us then into potentially year 4. If the board decided not to do tier 2, in year 4 we could open up for Perry at tier 3, okay? And then that would also allow us in that year 4 to look at a potential early childhood center, and also Washington at tier 2. That in year 4 is going to open up that additional $30 million, and again, that would be a combination of the bond funding, okay? But again, you're not going to do both of those Perry projects. If you took one of those offline, you would be able to move some of those other projects around, okay? Then in year 5, which is 2029, you open up again an additional 24.4 in funding. And again, this is with the understanding that the board wants to have no new taxpayer impact, that this is working within that scheme. You could certainly opt to do other things, but I believe that the board finds that really important, and that's how we built this funding, these funding options. So in that year 5, here you could do the early childhood center and a new Perry, okay? So again, you're going to choose one of those early childhood centers and that Perry option there, okay? That then brings us to 2030, where we could start looking at the renovations for some of our other schools in terms of the facility master plan, prioritizing South, BHS, and North in those next efforts, which gets us all the way to 2032, which is that additional 26.8 million in funding that comes available and allows us to bring online the additional facility master plan needs of all of our additional sites, okay? Which will take us all the way through year 10. Important to note, though, that at the bottom of this, you see that tier 1 remaining facility assessment needs come in at 83.3 million. What we would be doing in this plan, there's going to be some overlap in the facilities master plan and those needs assessments. So we will plan for each one of those schools as they come online to determine what is most critical. We will look at our district fund balance again, and we will again look at our O&M funding to continue to fund those facility needs, to offset the facility needs with what the choices are around the facilities master plan and what those priorities really wind up being. These are all in current dollars, so we know that those are going to fluctuate and they're going to change. It's really important to note that this is a potential direction, that there would be movement that would be taking place as critical needs come forward and as our planning moves in terms of what our overall funding looks like at the end of the day. These are all cost estimates based on square footage. They are not dollar for dollar what we would anticipate spending. Just for reference, we know that we have already funded 3.9 million in projects. When we went through the facility needs assessment, some of those items were much higher than what were in that facility needs assessment. Some were much lower, but at the end of the day, those pieces balanced out. I would anticipate we'd see something very similar as we start working through these projects. This gets us to that 110, okay, 110 million in projects over that 10 years, carries us all the way through those 10 years. Questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, where we see Perry here, tier 2.
Yep.
At years 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Let's say the Perry, good Lord, say the board, chooses tier 3 for Perry. We want to do
Yep.
the tier 3 items. Would those items start back in year 1 at all? Like, I assume we wouldn't just wait to do anything to Perry until year 4.
Correct. So what I would anticipate we could do, again, is move these pieces in and out as we see fit.
Okay.
So I don't think we have much capacity to go beyond that 32 million
Right.
in that first year. However, we could begin the work here in terms of tier 2 and get ourselves to tier 3 in those following
Okay.
years. If we're really gonna do that tier 4, that, however, is gonna be a little bit more challenging. I mean, then we are not gonna wanna do a lot of investment in the facility needs at Perry if we're really looking at doing that full-scale
Sure.
investment in a few years.
Okay.
And again, we can move some of those pieces around as the board sees fit.
Okay.
And all the next steps in the tier 1 are included in the first 3 years, right?
Yes, correct.
The
Yep,
second
that 23
part of
million
it.
is
Okay.
all of what's in that initial scope that you see there. And then the final slide, because we were requested to make an administrative recommendation, what the administration would recommend at this point is pursuing the initial scope as the board has wanted to see with Perry at that tier 2 option. We believe that that puts Perry where it needs to be a functioning, appropriate, positive learning space for our students, and still allows us to do the investment we need to do across the district. We think that is really what our families at Perry are looking for, is a safe neighborhood school that is going to stay for years to come. So that is really our thinking there. But again, we have other options that are available, but that is the administrative recommendation. Of note, a referendum is not required for this proposed timeline that we have in front of you. However, a referendum is always an option. If the board were to choose to go to referendum, you could prioritize some of the needs, for example, in that initial scope, that 23 million, and pull out your early childhood center, pull out a new Perry. That would enable you to do them sooner if you wanted to do them sooner, or do them on that proposed timeline, again, to minimize that taxpayer impact. You would have all of those different options available to you. Those aren't necessarily decisions you need to make immediately. If you wanted to come back in October and say, yep, this is what we want to do, this is the scope of what we want to do, you would then have the option of working through, how do we want to fund this moving forward? Do we want to fund it with or without a referendum? And what might that timeline look like for a referendum? And what might be those pieces on the referendum as well? Other questions? Mr. Zickert,
Mine's more, yeah, I guess it's a question.
or observations?
Or observation might be a better term for it. I think that on the things that we talked about before, we need to start with Perry, obviously, because we said we would do it, and we haven't moved as quickly as I'd like to have seen us move, but that's my personal opinion. So I think that's a priority. When it comes to the other stuff, I'm beginning to get some feedback on the funding mechanisms, and I know there's gonna be an article in the Boone County Journal, and there was one on the other side I saw the other day, somebody sent me, on how we fund these things, and I do agree that we don't have to. I 100% understand that. I've done school budgets before, I know what I'm At least I know the mechanism of it. My position is gonna be, it will be, I think, at least for now, is that the things we have to, the things like Perry, the things like the secure entrances, things like that, I think are givens. I mean, we spent a lot of money, I mean, we enclosed Lincoln, courtyards of Lincoln and Meehan for quite a bit of money, more than we're gonna spend on Perry. And I'm not saying that was bad, I'm just, we did that. We spend money on Washington, for example, as much or more than we're gonna spend, which I know has more kids, I get that, but we've done all that. So I look at that, but when it comes to doing new things, or things that are in addition to, I'm a proponent that if the people, if the community really wants that, then let's do it, let's give them a voice in it, because if we don't, we're mortgaging their future for their, it could be for their lifetime, for me it would be, but I mean, I know people are younger than I am, but, at least their kids, it's possible their kids could be paying for that down the road at 20 to 25 years, possibly 30, but I think 20 to 25 is probably more realistic, depending on how things go. And I know we all wish we could project economically how we'll be 20 years from now. I mean, I got money in Jorge's bank, and if he thinks he can project till then, I may reconsider, if he knows what it's gonna be exactly like 25 years from now, economically. He's good, but I don't think he's that good. But, maybe he is. If he is, God bless my, but yeah, I'm all for that. But, I do think the community deserves a voice in that, in my opinion, if that's what we're gonna do. And I mean, on some of the stuff like the secure entrances and things, Perry, we already said we were gonna do it, I get that part. Not quibbling about that at all. But I do think some of the other things, the community may want that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we did a referendum for another organization I was with, and I was really surprised how easily it passed. So I was wrong. I mean, I was hoping it would pass, but I just was surprised it was that easy. And maybe this will be the same way, but at least the community had a say. And I'm a big proponent of that.
So you're talking about anything beyond the initial scope of 23 million on slide 3, you would want to go out for referendum for anything beyond the initial scope of 23 million?
Yeah, let me look back just to make sure I'm talking about the right thing, but I think you're right. I wanna make sure I'm not, where am I at here? That was Perry, and what else? I can't
That's
It
the
was it was the initial, all the schools, like the basics, like that was Perry
Secure
Tier
entrances,
1.
things like that.
Yes, it was Perry Tier 1, it was the Tier 1 stuff, next steps on Tier 1.
Okay.
Here, that's a $2 million investment in Perry, not the 3.5
Right,
that you see here.
Right, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
On the tier 2 for Perry, it says attempts to keep student staff on site. So it sounds like we're gonna do our best, but what are we really looking at with that? Maybe that's for you guys, I don't know.
Sure.
So that's as far as the renovation and construction scope. It's a relatively lighter touch, and so there's definitely ways that you can phase it. The more phases you do, the longer it takes, but there's opportunities to keep people on site while the construction goes on.
And we feel pretty confident that we wouldn't have to make them go to other buildings.
I mean, I think that that's definitely an option, yeah. And when we get, if we proceed down that route and we work on the design, that's something that we would think about is how to design it so that it can be phased properly. You know, you might be able to move in between rooms as the construction get phased, things like that, but it's definitely possible.
I also think as we move forward too, we need to look at I mean, I looked at the learn how to talk, 6-day enrollment figures, for the schools, and they were down a little. I mean, it was pretty close, but I mean, they're just not insignificantly down, I guess would be a better time of putting it. But we also remember the 10-year demographics that don't think we're gonna, probably see much of an increase. You know, it'll be relatively flat. It may go, bounce a little, but not much, probably. But, I mean, that's not a for sure thing either. I also think, though, that when you look at a couple of the buildings, like, as an example, Caledonia. When my kids went to Caledonia, there were 800 kids in there. Now there's, without early childhood, 350 something, I think, 359, I think was the number. So if we do things like that, and we pull kids out of Washington, we're having big buildings that are really, really, really underutilized. what do we, I mean, that we're gonna put significant amount of money in. And I'm not against that necessarily either, I'm just saying that we have to look at that in the big picture of what are the economic choices we have when we do stuff like that, I mean, when we do this, we're taking, if we give to something, we're either not doing something or we're taking away from something else, whatever it is. Because there is only so much money to spend regardless, whether it's 110 million, whether it's 30, whether it's whatever, there's a limited pot, in essence. So I think those are things we need to consider as we move, as we continue the discussions with these things too.
So
Does anyone have any, go ahead.
The initial scope items, I think, are something that we have talked very repeatedly about, and we all coalesced around a number of these ideas that they were very necessary and appropriate. Where they parse out from the 37,000 for one to, 870,000 for another, I think that's, you're kind of splitting hairs at this point, where it's gonna be what it's gonna be, right? Completing these tasks is gonna come in all likelihood, greater than $23 million. However, the expenditure has seemed pretty consistently to be supported by the study and the science and the all of the details we've received about the buildings. And so I think that that's a very, for me, that was a very appropriate first step for which I would have a great deal of energy and be for moving forward with. In a perfect world, and it's not, I would love to be able to do more of a, for a reimagined Perry on the existing site. But I also think there's a fair bit of wisdom to the tier 3 option that's listed for Perry. And, based on the information that's been provided, it's helpful, it's beneficial, and I think ultimately it's gonna come down to the comfort level of the community, because I too feel like it's super important that we have, the voice of the community. We can say right now that there's no increase, and that would certainly be the intention. Everyone seems to coalesce around the idea that would be the case, and we would want that to be the case. But we've also had repeated reminders, which are very valid, that costs are only going up. And we wouldn't have expected to be paying, I think the figure was 183% more for the delivery of some, electricity services or power services. And so if we found ourselves in a space where we'd begun projects that we then needed to finish, we could definitely be heading much further above those numbers than so having the community weigh in to me feels very appropriate. And again, I also think that it also insulates future boards, because they're going to inherit the, whatever those boards are in year 2 and 3 and 4 and 7 and 10 and all those things, are going to be very, very important to insulate them as much as possible to the idea that there would be some level of, potential uprising. If people weigh in on it, and that gives us a clear direction. I'm going to, and I don't think dissent is the right word, and this is more wordy than I probably need to be, but I'm going to explain it because for me it matters. I'm a huge proponent of early childhood. I have a family who has, in this community, been profoundly impacted by the services of early childhood as far back as 2000. And my kiddos who are now grown people and have challenges and issues on a scale from soup to nuts, from a special needs perspective. I also believe very, very firmly in the model of an inclusionary class where there's some peer modeling that exists that is very beneficial on both sides of that equation. I think there's a lot to be gained. But I do believe that there is wisdom, prevailing wisdom, from the consideration of and vetting out to a further degree, even including the possibility of moving forward the ability to do a little bit more of what needs to be done for the early childhood programs, if we give more space and consideration to upgrades to the two spaces where they're currently existing. And I don't mean, you know, I mean the real upgrades that would need to be done. I'm not saying, you know, let's lower a paper towel holder in a bathroom and call that, you know, a renovation. I'm not saying that. But I think we then potentially broaden the options we could give to the community, and also at a reduced cost of 2 to 3 million, 2.5 to 3.5 million that was shared with us in each Caledonia and Perry to really do some of those things, could potentially also move those further in, move them forward into some of the earlier years. These later tiers are, you know, going to put us another, you know, 4, 5, 6 years down the road to making any substantive changes, you know, toward the advancements of programming in early childhood. Again, if a center is what the community wanted and they, you know, were willing to see that be a project in year 4 to 7, then that's the will of the people, and then that's what we should do. But I would like to see us give some continued robust consideration to digging a little deeper into exactly what we could accomplish from a renovation perspective in the buildings that would then be more broadly used, right? Because Caledonia and Washington, where these programs are housed, absent those programs, have even greater absent unused spaces. Because of course, you know, if we move them out, then, you know, we've got the 7-day numbers tell us we've got, you know, Caledonia probably a little over half full, if that. So that's my time and attention and consideration on the early childhood, is to dig deeper into the possibility of what a really robust renovation could look like, how close it could come to meeting needs, and having that discussion for it to possibly move forward into an earlier stage of maybe year 2 and 3, so that we're dealing with the issues or the potential issues that exist sooner. And then I do think, and perhaps it exists, but we had a question tonight, and I think it was a valid one, and I think others have asked the question. I do think here we are at year 1 looking at $23 million worth of updates. Necessary, appropriate, right? And some of them can contain systems updates and roofs and things like that. I do think it's very appropriate to also see where those are going to timeline out, to what kind of costs we're going to have. I certainly hope we wouldn't have a roof that needed to be replaced after 10 years. But the possibility that we would have the need for updates or repairs, and what would the $23 million cost us on a maintenance basis, and at what point would that come in? At what point does the clock run and say, if we do the work in years 1 and 2, by years 8 and 10, you know, we're going to likely see, you know, 10% of that cost coming back around to do updates and to, you know, spot treat, you know, the roofs and things like that. I do think it's an appropriate thing for us to see around corners and determine where we think some of those costs will hold, and at what point will we have additional costs.
Steve and Sean, can you tell us how possible that is for you to do?
As far as projecting where the maintenance cost would be,
I guess.
well, I think, you can jump in, but I think if you do regular maintenance and you get onto a cycle, which is what Sean's been talking about, so that you do everything from seal coatings to roof coatings to in a regular basis, then you're gonna get a lot more life out of them, so you're not gonna have 50% of the cost coming back after 12 years. You're gonna spend a little every year as opposed to waiting a long time to spend a lot. So it's hard to put a percentage on that, I would say, but that's really the approach. I learned that from a facility guy in Schaumburg years ago that had, 1 million square feet of paving, and he said, I have to pave X amount of square foot every year, and I have to seal coat X amount a year, because by the time I get around to 20 years later, I'm right back where I started. And if I miss 1 year, then I gotta double up. It really compounds quickly. So it's about regular budgeting and spending of an X amount per year, and not waiting, deferring, and then having big lump chunks, because that's when you run into, huge roofing costs, because recoating a roof is reasonably inexpensive compared to having to take it all out because all the insulation's wet, as an example.
Sure.
So seeing that plan, which I'm sure exists, but seeing that plan, I think would be super helpful to say, because I'm sure one exists now, right? We're not just waiting to do, we're not doing nothing in all the buildings, saying we'll wait until the board says this. So there must be some sort of a, preventative maintenance plan. So where we think these would fit in, and that's a great example of 1 million square feet of paving, and it's segmented out at 100,000 square feet a year. I don't know, whatever the plan is. I feel like that would be information that would be helpful.
That's partially what life safety is supposed to do as well on a 10-year rotating basis, but it focuses on very specific things, not just general maintenance.
And you do have some of those higher ticket immediate needs.
Yeah.
Washington School, the HVAC, I think it went down 6 times last year, and it takes us a good week and a half or 2 weeks to get it back up. It is just an older system that we can't get parts on. You have South Middle School, we talk about the ceiling tiles missing. That's because we have, I believe, 80 plus heat pumps in all these classrooms, and they're rusting from within, and we can't repair them. We either need to replace them, I think they're between 15 and 20,000 apiece, or replace the system. Go to a tried and true boiler air handler VAV system. The roofing, we've been trying to, for lack of better terms, piecemeal where we do. The past 2 years, we've come with a maintenance grant, and we're going to come to you very shortly again, probably in October, to once again, pick a section of roof, the worst section of roof, take that $100,000 and try and get so we're not taking water anymore. But I agree, there are some things that we can look at down the road, but there are some immediate needs. The HVAC at those 2 buildings are
And I would concur with that. I mean, I think that's what I'm looking at, like that. Some of that, we look at even the 23 million in the beginning, some of that stuff is for stuff we should have done before anyway. I mean, it's not just brand new. We found out today $23 million. And I guess I'm looking at it is that when we look forward, as we look forward through the 10 years or 50, or however many years we want to look down, we have to anticipate things like that, because for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter what the reason is that, and I know I love to talk about the North Track and the tennis courts and stuff like that, but I mean, those are costing us 5 to 6-fold what we would have paid if we'd done it when maybe we could have or should have or whatever. We can debate that too, but I think those are the things that I would like to prevent. They've happened, let's make sure we have a plan moving forward that we anticipate, whether it be the HVACs at South or, people complaining about, rightfully so, the ceiling tiles and things at Washington and things like that, that when those circumstances come up the next time, we anticipate them, we're ready for them, and we have the funds to be able to do it as we move. Then we have a plan. We know that, 10 years from now or 8 years from now, guess what? We're gonna have to, I'm just picking on BHS because it's such a much older building than North. BHS is probably gonna have more major issues coming forward than maybe North, just because it's a lot older and things like that. South probably more than Central, and just like that. So I think that's what concerns me about as we look for these sums of money as we move forward, that we include those in the projections too, because if we don't, then we're gonna be wondering where that money comes from when we get to that point.
Right. I think maybe one way to look at this from the assessment side of things is, Joanne and Sean have been having to kind of chase their tail a little bit, in the sense that there's been so much deferred over time that they can't catch up, right? They can't get to where they are. So having gone through the full assessment, looking at a 10-year window and then boiling that 110 down to the 23. The 23 is, the easiest way to think of it is kind of gets you back to level playing ground where now we're at a point where we can set a regular maintenance schedule, and the rest of that can be done over 5, 6, 7 years, and we can start to get into a cycle that keeps you on a cash flow and a projected basis. That gets you to that starting point, is kind of the way I look at that 23. That should get you to a point where you can start doing just regular, like you said, a schedule of regular maintenance, give or take, $1 million or $2 million with costs the way they are jumping around. But that's really what the way I look at that 23.
And that's how I concur with that, and that's where I fully support that, but it's the other stuff that I think, for me personally, that I'd like to see the community weigh in and then say, yeah, you know what? We don't care what it costs, we want that tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that. And I've listened to their voice, and I think we're fine with that, but I do agree with you, I think that's, I would think your explanation was exactly what I was talking about. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or discussions on the master plan?
Just one clarifier.
Sure.
This document for the needs assessment, this is that 10-year plan that is living. We keep talking about this being a living document. This is where our preventative maintenance, as projects are done, they start moving, we're already a year into this while we were trying to make decisions. Things are moving. The 3 million that we've already done are now moving, and so this is where we're going to reside, where that preventative maintenance is, what we're dictating. So when it says useful life of a roof is 15 years, the preventative maintenance is all going to be built in from this document. So I just want to re-stress that this document isn't just here on our bookshelf. This is what we're living with. I've converted it all into Excel from there, and we're marking projects off and moving them out future years. So this is very much alive and doing, and I think that is addressing what your concerns are, and that's what I want to make sure that you are aware of, that this document is a living document that we're continuing. So as we do the roofs at Meehan and Lincoln with maintenance grants, those are getting out there. Do we need to do ceiling? Do we need to do these, what are our timeframes for those? So, just to reassure the board that that document exists and we're using it every day right now, because we're on the topic of the master plan. This is something that resides on my desk every day as we work through it to get you the information, but also so when I'm building the budget and I'm looking at this of what do I have outstanding coming forward. So I appreciate that wanting and that desire to make sure that we're looking forward, because I do feel, as everybody has said, it is overlooked maintenance, that I needed this, as you've heard me say it a million times, I needed this to know where I was starting. And now I know where I'm starting. We're starting to build past, as we've done projects, we just start putting that out for our preventive maintenance moving forward.
That's a good reminder that it exists in that form.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else have any thoughts on the presentation tonight?
I just am wondering, and I don't know if now is the time you would like me to speak, or if you are gonna share some other thoughts, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm bringing back for next month.
Right.
So I'm hearing, I think, that we are, generally speaking, okay with the timeline that is played out here, but we want to make sure that we have input from the community on Early Childhood Center and Perry above and beyond that initial $2 million mark. So we're really just looking at this 23 million and building a referendum around these other pieces. But otherwise, the thoughts behind what we have here appear to be in line with what the board is thinking. And then back to, I think, Ms. Whitcomb, that once perhaps we go to the community, should that not be supported, we perhaps look at additional options in terms of playing out, utilizing our existing sites for early childhood, or if you want us to play that out a little bit more before that. Just not exactly sure what I need to prepare to bring forward for next month?
I would like to see, Everest included in that initial, year 1, year 2, year 3 phase. I mean, we're gonna spend more than that on a track. And this is, this is something that is aligned with our strategic plan. We can get more kids, to graduate. We've heard Mr. Lascola tell us time and time again that the kids he serves at Everest are kids that almost certainly would not graduate if we didn't serve them there, and that we have a greater need than we have space for. That is a low-cost, high-yield thing that we can do right now that
And it is
will
in there,
impact.
right, I'm looking at page 12.
Right, but I just wanted to make sure that that stays within the non-referendum items that this board is willing to pay for, because that's non-negotiable for me. And then with respect to EC on the current site, I think Dr. Baumann did a really good job in the board update this week of laying out the things that can be accomplished at the current sites, and the things that cannot be addressed at the current site. And so I think if board members have specific questions about that or want more information on any of those items specifically, they should probably reach out to Dr. Shug and Dr. Baumann to expand on that. It was pretty detailed. But if the board wants to go out for referendum on anything beyond the initial scope, I would be fine with the proposed schedule of construction here that the administration has laid out, especially since it does not impact property tax bills. And certainly if future board gets to year 6 and they realize that they can't do X, Y, or Z without impacting property tax bills, then 2030 board certainly can make different choices. I mean, I know I am not going to be the final say on any of this. This is a 10-year plan, and just kill me now if I'm on this board in 10 years. So this is going to be, 2030 board, 2035 board, who are going to be hopefully revising this and adding to it so that it's that this is a living document, that we're always looking 10 years out, that it isn't just this huge, massive undertaking once every 10 years, that we're always rolling into that and looking forward into that 10-year period. So, nothing that this board decides at this meeting or the next meeting means that X is going to happen in year 10. So I'm very comfortable with years 1, 2, and 3. I was the lone vote to close Perry. This conversation has made it obvious why. If we move early childhood out of Washington, Caledonia, what are we going to do with all that empty space? Well, we're going to have to convince the community that it was a wise choice to keep Perry open when we do have space and to spend a lot of money on it when we do have space for those kids in other buildings. But that ship has sailed. There are really no good Perry options for me. It's absurd to choose an option where we're moving kids out of that building for a year and teachers to do construction on it. I mean, that's crazy. I think it's crazy to just put a Band-Aid on Perry and leave this problem to a board 10 years down the road. It does not address any of the equity concerns at Perry. It does not move that 30% of kids back into Perry their homeschool's Perry, but they can't go there. But none of those parents came and yelled at us. So We're not gonna do anything for those kids. You know, none of these Perry options are good. I mean, I don't even know what, I'm certainly, I mean, certainly we have to do the, Tier 2 Perry. I think it's a disservice to the families at Perry. They deserve more. They deserve the same facilities level that our kids in other buildings have. Whether they get that or not, I guess it'll be up to referendum. I don't know how we're gonna sell that Perry Tier 3 or 4A, but that's not my problem. And in fact, the board cannot sell or advocate for a referendum. That would have to be a private group that would do that. So, yeah, I think this is good. I wish we could do it all right now, but year 1, 2, and 3, I'm fine. It's fine.
I would speak as the physical conservative, and not whether I got other people to feel that way or not, who knows? But I think because your taxes don't go up, doesn't mean there's not an economic impact on you. When I buy a car, sometimes I pay for it, and sometimes I do a payment depending on what the interest rates are, and depending on what I'm getting in my money in the bank. But I make an economic decision on that. But I'm always happy when the car payments end, and I can use that money for something else if I want to. If I want to use it and go out and buy another car, I can. If I don't want to use it, go out and buy another car, I can. But it's an economic decision I make. And to me, I'm not saying it's the wrong or right thing to do, but this is like remortgaging your house when you're a year away from paying it off. And maybe that's the right thing to do, but I think you need to have a logical discussion with the community on whether that's the right thing to do, whether they agree with that or don't agree with it. Because just because I like it doesn't mean everybody else does, and the same with a lot of other things. I mean, there's people, if we asked them what the ideal situation would be at Belvedere North or Belvedere High School or South or something like that, I'm pretty sure they could come up with a pretty extensive list and what they could do to enhance the education in their buildings too. But there's also the physical constraints that we can't do that, won't do that, or haven't done it. And maybe they'll come up with I mean, they could argue the same thing, I think every building could, and be legitimately so. So I think those are things we have to look at. I think you have to live within your means. I mean, I'd love to expand my house on what it is right now. And even though I may be able to afford to do it, I don't know if that's economically a smart thing to do. I think that's what we have to do, let people weigh in and say, we do or we don't. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But that was just my opinion.
Mr. Bukar, I know you had said that you might have something to share with the board tonight.
I said I'd share Thursday.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said September 16th. It's not going to be.
Isn't it 19th, Thursday? What's Thursday?
It's the facilities committee meeting.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, you had said the 16th. You mean on Thursday?
Yes.
Okay.
That's when the facility committee's, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, the full board doesn't typically come to that meeting. Okay. All right, we'll wait for that. Mr. Herr, anything else? Ms. Haug?
Yeah, I'm still kind of chewing over this, to figure out what the best option is. We need to do something with Perry. So I'm still gathering my thoughts on that, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I'm not sure tier 2 gets us there, but again, I'm still kind of gathering my thoughts around that and figuring out kind of where we go from here. But in terms of Everest, tier 3 in years 1, 2, 3, yeah, of course. Makes sense to me.
Me too. I think Perry tier 2 minimum, I find myself resting between 2 and 3, and I think it's because of the students having to go somewhere else and the staff for a year. Mm-hmm. I think that's the majority of the feedback I've received, so I hope all you Perry people are watching tonight, send me feedback. Do you want your kids to go to another school for a year or so, or would you be happy with tier 2? I guess I'm really interested in hearing what we have to say about that. Early childhood, everybody knows, huge proponent of that. I live it every day. I see the difference it makes. I don't mind asking the community. I don't necessarily want to wait 4 years before we do something. I read the emails where they're talking about toilets and sinks. In my classroom, I'm lucky. We have a bathroom, we have a small toilet, which ironically enough is great for me. So I'd rather use that toilet than the regular one. Sorry. But sinks, I mean, when our bathroom is out of order, it's not only bad for me, it's bad, for everybody. It's like moving those kids down the hall if there's no changing table. So it would be a priority for me to make sure that we are fixing those basic needs. I work in with a preschool for all grant. I know how important the audits are and the playground equipment. And I've been through audits where they're out there measuring with, rulers to make sure our equipment is so far out for the ground. We don't have that here at all. That's basic. That's basic. My small district provides that for our kids. So I would like to see, if we're not going to invest in a building, which I think would be wonderful for this community. I think the emails have stated why it's important with our director and our OTs and our psychologists and how it's, hard for them to go site to site. 100% think that it is valid, and I think it's a great goal that we need to have. But if this board is not willing to do that, I think we need to put some money towards early childhood now. I don't want to wait for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that point. The only other thing I would say is on the enrollment thing is that I saw the BHS and North enrollments, which are from somebody who was there for a while. I mean, I know they're down. And if we pull more kids, we got kids in Running Start. We got kids, if we expand Everest, that's gonna mean even less for both. So that means they're both gonna have more space, and they're operating at well under capacity right now, percentage-wise at least. That we gotta look at ways to utilize that space too, without, maybe that'll save us on some other end of it, that we could utilize that space by doing the other one, and it may not work out even, but it may help a little.
All right, I'm gonna try to see if I have some of the will of the board. So I'm hearing that the first 3 years seem like, as they are drafted here, appropriate. Beginning in year 4, I think right now I'm not hearing that we are looking at Perry tier 3 or 4 at this point, and that we would want quicker movement on the early childhood center. Again, all those things could go to referendum between now and that time. So we would keep the master facility plan with the first 3 years as they are. We would cross out the early childhood center in year 5 and the other 2 Perry options at this time. Remove, and keep the rest of the plan as it is. Is that,
I'm not hearing that about Perry.
okay, all right.
I guess
Mr.
I was
Rivera
hearing,
just said
Yeah,
You mean-
help me.
he
So,
was still
I think
mulling it over.
referendum.
Yeah, I think
Putting a
Oh,
box around
referendum.
that, because we can't pay for this stuff without a referendum either, is my understanding. Like, in
Correct.
order to do the basics of what we need, we have to borrow money. And if this board isn't willing to borrow money without going out to referendum, like, starting here, this goes out to referendum.
Okay.
Is what I'm hearing.
Well,
And
I mean,
then
I think a couple of board members have weighed in to that effect. I don't think every board member has definitively stated it would have to be a referendum. That's my opinion, but again, this is a collective decision that, Jorge's still mulling things over and evaluating things and preparing information, so, I don't think, just to use Mrs. Hauk as an example, I don't think Mrs. Hauk saying she'd like to move, early childhood forward, which I would probably agree with as well if we were gonna do something on a more smaller version, is an indication that that's what the board is saying, just like I don't think that, 2 board members saying, they would want it to definitely go to referendum is the definitive final statement on that. That's still, I think, in play and discussion for a number of board members. I feel like what I hear tonight is pretty solid, support of the first 3 years.
Okay.
Without much contention, or at least that's what I feel like I'm hearing around the table. And whether or not we bring anything else forward is still maybe up for debate or discussion, and there's still some board members who are mulling over options with Perry.
So perhaps we don't put it on for vote in October, since board members are still thinking. And we come back for discussion in October after we've heard Mr. Booker's thoughts on the 19th.
Well,
and
Mr. Herrera, right, because he wanted more time as well.
I understand, I was
Yeah.
continuing
I'm
my
sorry.
thoughts,
Yeah,
and
thank
it doesn't seem like Ms. Whitcomb's ready to make a decision with respect to years 4 through 10 either. So I guess we need to get board members to coalesce around, at least hopefully a majority of board members to coalesce around where their cutoff is for requiring a referendum as opposed to borrowing money without a referendum. I think that would be an answer that we need to vote on this. So everyone think about that. If you have questions, direct them to Mrs. Armstrong about how bonding works, funding works. She can consult with our bonding experts, Ann and, I don't know, Don, Dan, Steve, Bob. Okay.
Bob.
So
And,
I guess I'm confused. I apologize, I interrupted, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
I thought we were, maybe help me understand, were we not pretty universally in support of years 1, 2, and 3, that first 23 million? Are we not able to just vote on that section, or we need to vote on, maybe just clarify if that's not the case. Is that not something that could come forward in October without anyone tonight raising hesitation or concern about those first 3 years?
I think what I would like to see, given the fact that nothing we decide on in October is set in stone for the next 10 years, like, I think if there's more information you need between now and October, let's try to gather it so that we can vote on a plan. You know, we've spent a long time on this. This has been well over a year's process. So if there's more information you need, for instance, the early childhood questions that Ms. Whitcomb had, other board members may have those questions about, you know, remaining in place as opposed to building a new facility and what those needs might be. But certainly, if we weren't going to look beyond year 3, I would have hoped that we would have given that direction a long time ago. I think a 10-year plan is smart, and we've all talked about the use of looking forward and how we should look forward so that we can keep moving. And my fear is that if we don't get a plan in place that we can start working with and moving forward, it will always be it won't get done. So if we can try to ask our questions that we have between now and the October meeting, I think that would be great. If you know, we're not gonna have a crystal ball drop into our laps between now and October, that's for sure. But and if a majority of the board just can't look out past year 3, then that's the will of the board. But I would hope that we could do that. I really would.
What I'd like to see too, Mrs. Armstrong, since we're gonna ask questions right now, is that when we look at funding for let's just say the first part of it, as we all know, I mean, we've talked about it, because I hear the bargaining units talk about it all the time, is we have a sizable surplus. There's fund balance. I know that if we use some of that, it affects our ratings, you know, and I get that part, I do. But it would be interesting to know, at least within reason, how much does it affect it? I mean, if I go borrow more money, my credit score may drop 30 points or, you know, something like that. It's not a big deal. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't really matter much. So I guess I'm looking at, what would the impact be if we decided to do something like that? I mean, is it a major one, a minor one? I mean, I know it'll be an impact, but.
Yeah, and I could definitely get with Ann, and as she indicated, that thoughtful, purposeful use of your fund balance for these one time, we're gonna do this, that's not gonna have as big of a significant impact. The bigger question is, what ability do we have to move our ed fund balance to an O and M? Because you are taking money that was levied and is in fund balance in your Fund 10 and wanting to use it in your O and M and your projects. So that is a completely different use of funds in which they were levied for. So that's gonna be the other side of that question, is what ability do, we always have an ability to make a transfer from one to another, but I want more clarity of what that looks like coming from your fund balance versus your current year's budget report. So I can definitely get more information on that for you.
Well, and I just want to take us back one more time. I am trying very hard to understand what my ask is here so that I get it right. So we're saying two different things, first of all, in the year 1, 2, and 3. One is the 23 million, but what we have here in the years 1, 2, and 3 is actually an
32.
outlay for 32 million.
Yeah,
So I can first of all build 2 pieces of that for next month. Do we like 32? Do we like 23? I can certainly do that.
I like 32. I could just weigh in now and tell you I'm fine with 32.
If we feel good with 32, which again is, to Mr. Zickert's point, also asking us to make an investment out of fund balance, which we are planning for and prepared to make, and if we do so thoughtfully, should be able to maintain all of our bond ratings appropriately, yes?
Yes.
So if we feel good about 32,
And we can do that without borrowing at all.
and we can do that without,
You
Well, we would be borrowing.
You would be borrowing, you would be doing, probably
Only
about
3
20
million we wouldn't be
million
borrowing.
in life safety bonds, which don't have the petition period, which those we can do with an approved life safety survey, and getting the ROE and ISB's approval. That doesn't
Is
require,
the
that doesn't even
board
have that
comfortable with
notification
that?
period and all of that.
Is
Those
the-
are health life safety bonds.
So we're going to distinguish between borrowing for health, life, safety bonds and other bonds. That's what we would, that would be the distinction the board would need to
DSUB
make.
Yeah, those
correct.
D-sub bonds are the ones that we could issue, which, you know, as I'm saying, about 20 million maybe in your health, life, safety. The rest would be looking probably at those D-sub bonds, which would have that petition period and that would not require the referendum, but you can always take that option if that's the option you were choosing. But that would be still issuing those types of bonds in addition to the health, life, safety to fund that 32 with the fund balance commitment that we're making with our money as well.
Okay, so we would be remortgaging the house without a referendum.
Right, and that would roll in some of that restructure that we had already talked about, that you were gonna have coming up in 2025, 26. That restructure of our current to get that blip off of
Yep.
the refunds, that would all be incorporated into that as well.
Plus, I think, well, that's why I think it'd be beneficial to see what impact it would have, because we don't, you make an educated decision based on how much, I mean, when I make a down payment on something, I make an educated decision based on what it's gonna cost me later versus what it's costing me now, and make a decision on that, and the same with the fund balances, that if we, that's our quote, down payment.
Yeah.
Maybe we wanna make a bigger one, maybe we don't wanna make a bigger one based on the circumstances and the effects it has, based on whether we do or we don't. So I think that's valuable information to know before you make the decision.
okay.
Okay.
So, just to restate again, so for next month, I'm going to bring the 32 million, I'm gonna spell out the D-sub and the life safety bonds, so we know exactly which parts of which they are, and get us to that, and how much is gonna be our own investment, and get us to that 32 million, and we think we are prepared to vote on that. Then I'm gonna structure out the other options that we have here available for us in years 4 through 10, and try to get some additional feedback on what that referendum build might look like, or if we wanna make a different choice there, to get some additional feedback on that, and then we can potentially bring that back in November. Does that seem reasonable?
I would like to do it all in one, but
All in one?
if other people want to piecemeal this out, I guess we can. I'm not trying to understand the distinction between borrowing without a referendum for some money and not for others. But
To make the point finer a little on this, one is for life safety things, for things that government thinks we ought to be doing or should be doing for the safety and well-being for the kids. the ones that you should do list versus you want list. The life safety are the things we either should have done or need to do to make sure our kids are in a safe and comfortable learning environment. The other stuff are things that we may like to do, but that doesn't necessarily fall under those categories of safety and things like that we have to distinguish for our kids. I'm not saying both aren't necessary, but there is a difference between the two. I mean, if I want to remodel my house, I can remodel and put a kitchen, I can redo the kitchen, I can do stuff like that, but if my front door is ready to fall apart and people can walk in whenever they feel like it, that's a safety issue. That's an issue that is different than spending money on remodeling your kitchen, in my opinion. And I think life safety are things that we're doing for the protection and well-being of our kids, which, in my opinion, is the biggest advocate as I am for academics. That is our number one charge in schools, is the safety and well-being of our kids, period.
It's true. I mean, it should pass in a referendum, if we're trusting the public to make these decisions. So I'm not sure I understand the distinction. We either trust the community and make the right decisions for our kids or not. But I would like to see it come all together in one package. But if everyone else wants to piecemeal it, that's
I'm okay
fine.
with it in the way that you just outlined.
I will compromise.
But additionally, we have another meeting, right, the beginning of October, do we not? Have another, where this could come forward, so perhaps additional discussion surrounding that would get us all the way there
Okay.
in October.
Yep.
I mean, people are being.
Yep. And people need
October
to
3rd.
ask their questions between now and then. Like, we're never gonna get there if people aren't asking questions between meetings and following up and getting information. Like, this is, so ask your questions.
So October 3rd, we have our special board meeting. So we will keep that on the books. I will lay out the 3 years, I will lay out the 10 years, I will lay out a variety of options. Anyone with any questions in the meantime is going to ask them. And then maybe by the October 14th, we will have a full 10-year option that we can vote on. And just really important to again note that you're not spending the money right now, you're just giving us direction so that we can start the process. These processes take a ton of time. So we want to be able to start moving forward on these really important pieces, because it's not like it's gonna happen tomorrow. We have to go out to bid, we have to secure the work, we have to do all those different pieces. So the sooner we can get all those things aligned, the better. But thank you. I think really good feedback, and I think the fact that we have some level of consensus on years 1 through 3 is certainly a step forward in the right direction. I'm excited for the next steps. I think Sean and Steve are too.
All right. Next up, upcoming contract renewals and reports. Any comments, Dr. Shaw?
Nope.
All right, administration reports.
I got a very, very brief superintendent's comments. We had a wonderful start to the school year. Widely stated to be one of the best starts that we've had. So feel really, really good on our kickoff and what we are anticipating to be a really fantastic year. As you may or may not recall, we did postpone the start of our early childhood this school year so that our early childhood teachers could be available to our kindergarten teams to help with the transition. That was very well received. Our kindergarten staff really appreciated it, and I think helped us with that smooth transition. And then we had a wonderful first day with our early childhood students as well. We also had a fantastic SIP day for our EC and kindergarten team who worked together. And now we are utilizing some on-site coaching to really help us, again, continue to have that smooth transition in kindergarten. We know that was a real struggle area for us last year. So working hard to make that improvement this year. Playworks, last year we began Playworks at Meehan Elementary School. This year it has expanded to all of our elementary schools, creating some additional support and structures in some of our unstructured time, which is where we see the bulk of behaviors that can be really challenging to our teachers and to our staff. This again has been a fantastic program at Meehan, and we are seeing that it's having great results at our other elementaries as well. So we are excited about that. And we've talked a lot about our subs and Dr. Ady's work with his team to really orient our subs and build our sub pool. How big's our sub pool, Dr. Ady?
It's about 170 right now, which
And-
is as big as large as it's been in a few years.
And that is really a testament to the work of Dr. Ady's team and really working hard to provide our subs with the information they need to be successful. As Mr. Herrera noted, we had our first time D100 representation in the Hispanic Heritage Parade this past weekend. We had a wonderful group go out there and represent D100. And that's it. Great start to the year. Super excited about what's going to happen next. Any questions? That's all I got.
Excellent. Alrighty. Gotta look ahead to upcoming district events. We've got our whole calendar on there for the rest of the school year. Board members should take a peek at that. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned at about